I'd always dreamed of living in Italy. The food, the art, the language, it felt like a place where I could truly find myself. I grew up in a small town in Australia, where everyone knew each other, and while I loved it, I craved something bigger. When I turned 22, I decided to become an au pair. It was the perfect way to travel, immerse myself in a new culture, and save some money while I was at it. I'd studied Italian in high school and picked it up again in university, so I figured I'd manage well enough. Plus, I adored kids babysitting, had been my side gig for years, and I'd always been good at it. This was my chance to make a life abroad, even if just for a year. I signed up with an agency that matched me with a family in a small coastal town near Naples. The Rossi family had two daughters, Chiara, who was 7, and Sofia, who was 4, and their profile seemed perfect. The parents, Marco and Elena, were in their late 30s, both professionals who traveled often for work. They needed someone reliable to look after the girls, help with light housework, and teach them a bit of English. Their house looked stunning in the photos' white stone walls, a terrace overlooking the sea, lemon trees in the yard. It felt like a postcard come to life. During our video calls, Elena was warm and chatty, asking about my experience with kids and telling me how excited the girls were to meet me. Marco was quieter, but he smiled and nodded along. I couldn't wait to get started. When I arrived in Italy, Marco picked me up from the Naples airport. He was polite but distant, explaining that Elena was tied up with a work emergency. The drive to their town was breathtaking, winding roads along cliffs, the Mediterranean sparkling below, but Marco barely spoke. I chalked it up to him being tired or maybe not great with English. When we got to the house, it was even more beautiful than the pictures, though quieter than I'd expected. Elena greeted me at the door with a quick hug and a glass of wine, apologizing for the chaos of their schedules. The girls were already in bed, she said, but I'd meet them in the morning. That first night, I unpacked in my room a cozy space with a view of the sea and fell asleep to the sound of waves, feeling like I'd landed in paradise. The next day, I met Chiara and Sofia. Chiara was shy at first, hiding behind her dark curls, but she warmed up when I pulled out a coloring book I'd brought from Australia. Sofia was a ball of energy, tugging at my hand to show me her toys. They were sweet kids, and I felt at ease right away. The first week went smoothly. Elena left detailed schedules for the girls' meals and activities, and Marco was in and out, often gone before I woke up. I took the girls to the beach, practiced English with them, and started to settle into the rhythm of the house. But something felt off, just beneath the surface. The house was too quiet at times, like it was holding its breath. I'd hear faint creaks at night, footsteps on the stairs. But when I mentioned it to Elena, she laughed and said it was an old house settling. About 2 weeks in, I started noticing little things. Chiara would draw pictures, normal kid stuff, houses and flowers, but sometimes she'd sketch dark, scribbled shapes in the corners, muttering about the shadow lady. I asked her what she meant, and she'd clam up, saying it was nothing. Sofia, meanwhile, began waking up screaming from nightmares, clinging to me and whispering about someone watching her through the window. I checked outside once, heart pounding, but saw nothing, just the lemon trees swaying in the breeze. I told myself it was just kids being kids, their imaginations running wild. But then I found something that made my stomach drop. One afternoon, while the girls were napping, I was tidying up the living room. Under the couch, I found a small wooden box, carved with intricate patterns. Curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. Inside was a lock of dark hair tied with a red ribbon, a handful of tiny bones, maybe from a bird or a mouse, and a folded piece of paper. When I unfolded it, I saw a drawing of a woman with long hair and hollow eyes, surrounded by jagged lines. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, was the word Maledetta Italian, or cursed. My Italian wasn't perfect, but I knew that much. I shoved the box back under the couch, my hands trembling. I didn't know what it meant, but it felt wrong, like I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't meant to see. That night, I couldn't sleep. The creaks were louder, more deliberate, like someone pacing downstairs. I locked my door and lay there, staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was just the house. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock on my door. My blood ran cold. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just waited. The knock came again, then stopped. When I finally worked up the nerve to check, the hallway was empty, but there was a faint smell, like damp earth and something sour. The next morning, I asked Elena if anyone had been in the house overnight. She frowned, said no, and suggested I was jet-lagged. Marco didn't even look up from his coffee. I didn't push it, but I started keeping my phone under my pillow, just in case. Things escalated after that. One day, while I was helping Sophia with her shoes, she pointed at the wall and said, "She's there again." I turned, but nothing was there, just a blank stretch of plaster. Chiara grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't look at her, she doesn't like it." My skin prickled. I asked them who she was, but they wouldn't say more, just exchanged a glance like they shared a secret. That evening, I found another drawing tucked into my bag, this one of me, with those same hollow eyes staring back. It was in Chiara's style, but the lines were too precise, too angry. I confronted Elena about it, showing her the paper. She went pale, snatched it away, and said it was just a game the girls played, but her voice shook, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. A few nights later, I woke to the sound of whispering outside my door. It was low and fast, in Italian I couldn't quite catch. I cracked the door open, and the hallway was dark, but I saw a shadow move tall, thin, darting around the corner. I grabbed a lamp as a makeshift weapon and crept downstairs, my heart hammering. The living room was empty, but the wooden box was on the coffee table, open, its contents spilled out. The lock of hair was gone. I heard a thud from the kitchen and nearly dropped the lamp. When I peeked inside, Marco was standing there in the dark, staring out the window. He didn't turn around, just said, "Go back to bed," in a voice that sounded hollow. I didn't argue. I ran upstairs and locked my door again. The next morning, I told Elena I was leaving. I couldn't stay in that house anymore, not with the girls' fear, the drawings, the noises, Marco's eerie behavior. She begged me to reconsider, saying the girls loved me, that they'd figure out whatever was bothering me. But when I mentioned the box, her face crumpled. She muttered something about old stories and bad luck, then went silent. Marco drove me to the train station that afternoon, not saying a word. As I boarded the train back to Naples, I looked out the window and saw Chiara and Sophia standing on the platform, watching me go. Chiara waved, but Sophia just stared, clutching a piece of paper I couldn't see. I spent a few weeks with a friend in Rome before flying back to Australia. The agency called to check in, and when I told them what happened, they said the Rosses had withdrawn from the program, no explanation, just gone. I tried to put it behind me, but months later, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just a plain envelope. Inside was a drawing me again, with those hollow eyes, and the word maledetta scrawled across it. I burned it in my backyard that night, heart racing, praying whatever I'd left behind in that house wouldn't follow me home. I still don't know what was real, whether it was the family, the kids, or something darker, but I'll never step foot in that town again.